Hello, everybody. This is Jamil. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you are doing well. So, it's good to have you here. So, let's start with introduction. So, for anyone who don't know me, so I'm Jamil. I'm the director of product and operations here at BetaWorks. I've been working here for the past 11 years already, so a long time. And the goal of the sessions or the sequence of sessions that we are having these workshops are to focus on the translator use case. So I want to share some knowledge about the platform, about what we are doing, how you can perform better with the within BWX, and yeah, and respond to questions as well. So my goal here is to really have this interactive session. So as we go, if you have any questions for me, please send in the chat. I will do my best to respond to these questions. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, that is good to have you here. And please let's make this as interactive as possible and send me any questions that you have during the this presentation. All right. So I'm already sharing my screen with you. Let me change to this tab in here, which is my actual presentation. So I promise. So there's just a few slides here. I promise that I'm trying to do my best to not try to not to bore you with too much text. So let me just start this presentation. There you go. Okay, so this is more to guide us through the session. So I have a few topics in here that I'm going about to cover. And again, if you have questions, please send it to the chat. But the main goal here, again, is to try to share some knowledge and share something that can help you to make a better use of your platform. So starting with this first slide, I'm going to just read this because this I wrote a few weeks ago when I was preparing this presentation here for you. So it is not about replacing humans with AI, but about learning how to use the tools we have at our disposal to make humans even more efficient at what they do. So I think that this resumes pretty much what we are doing here as a company, as a tech company, and how we envision the AI usage in this industry. Uh, so again, the AI, BWX, or editor. So all these are tools that can help us, help translators, help translation agencies, help enterprise companies to achieve their goals. So in our world, like in the localization world, I talk about specifically about translation, localization in general, right? So that's how we see it. So we put together um, quite a lot tools and features within our platform. But again, the end goal is to make sure that we are delivering good quality content to our clients, to them translating my own content um, in the best way that I can do that. So again, that's how we envision it. So BetaWorks, AI, everything that comes up within our platform are just tools, and the tool is just as good as the people that are using it. So again, the goal here is to make sure that we are covering this really well. Manuela, hi Manuela, this sounds very bad. Oh, apologize for that. So is there anyone else having issues with the audio? Just to make sure. Okay. So if anyone else having issues, okay. Thank you, Patricia, for letting me know. But again, if anyone else has any problems with audio, please just let me know, and I'll do my best to uh, switch. I have another microphone here if that's required. All right. So let's continue here. Move on to the next slide. So thank you, everyone. Sarah, Caroline, Claudia, and by the way, again, thank you for being here as well, and thank you for our intro too. So I have quite a few topics here. So in the previous session, I cover some topics such as how to use our editor. I gave a quick overview on the features we have in the editor, how to use it. I talked about our context-sensitive translation and all that. So I'm going to touch on upon these items again, some of them, but this session specifically I created based on the feedback that I received from the previous session, where people were asking me how they could set up their accounts in BeetleWorks. Um, and also how the editor, the translation editor, would behave with a different language. So I just put here like Bulgarian, Spanish, but if anyone here speaks a different language, when the time comes, so please let me know in the chat. So if you speak Arabic or Japanese or Korean, so I'm going to create a project with those languages so you can see how the translation, how the context-sensitive translation behaves in different languages, right? Okay, give me just a second. Uh, I'm just checking the chat. So, Manuel, I think it's mic. There's an echo effect. Try to mute your mic. Okay. All right. So, if again, if anyone else is having issues with the audio, so Manuela, by the way, maybe you could try to disconnect and connect again. Maybe that helps with the audio. Not sure, uh, but it seems that it is working okay for most of the people in here. All right. So let's start with a quick recap of the previous session. All right. For that, let me just switch this. So we have this in our YouTube channel. So if you open our page, so Beetleworks, and you scroll down, you can see here past live streams. So we have the previous sessions recorded. So we have this one that was recorded 13 days ago and another one 3 weeks ago. So again, if you want to have more details about what we discussed and what I shared in the previous sessions, all this were recorded, and this session is also being recorded. So if you may have to drop it before it ends, so you can still watch through our YouTube channel. All right. Okay, so now just a quick recap of the previous section. Let me just open here any projects in the editor just to show exactly what I showed previously. All right, so again, it was just an overview on what we have in our editor. So on top right, you have this help button. So as you can see here, if I click in here, you can see some shortcuts. This usually is really helpful for translators. Um, then on top here, you have like the progress bar, you have the file name, file size, you have the workflow step, language combination. So this file is from English US to Spanish Latin America. Um, from left to right again. So first one is comments. So you can add comments in here. So for instance, if I add a comment in here and I submit it, anyone that has access to this particular task will be able to see it. So let's say that I'm a translator and I want to ask a question for the project manager because I'm not sure maybe how the client wants something in here in this segment to be translated, right? Or maybe another question. So I can add a comment here and submit it. So this we pass it on to the project manager, which can respond to that. So you can have like this thread in here. And also there's option to add like a private note. So private notes is not visible for anyone except you. So if I add a private note here, it's literally like a note for myself. So maybe I want to remember myself why I choose to use Rapido as translation for fast, because in the glossary maybe there was a different word for that, right? So this is basically a note for myself. Second tab, suggestions. This is probably the most important one, where you are going to spend most of your time while you are translating content, because this is where translation memory suggestions live, a machine translation suggestions live, glossary suggestions will live, and also where you can use this context-sensitive translation. So I'm going to dig into more details in a few minutes about that. For now, I'm going to move on to the next step, which is the instructions. So instructions and reference files when the project gets created. So again, in the scenario where you the translator for a translation agency, the translation agency created a project. The translation agency added maybe some instructions or reference files for you. So you have an alert in here. So when you as a translator opens the editor, you have your attention um, directed to this instruction step. So there will be like assign an icon here showing you that there are either instructions or reference files, so you don't miss that out. Next up is the QA issue. So standard QA checks, we have quite a lot in here. So like double spaces, missing tags, missing glossary mismatch, and so on. And you can also save the ones that you use the most. So for instance, I always use that example because I as a project manager, sometimes I always check if tags are missing because tags can literally break the files, right? So what I do is I select just the tags. So as you saw, I removed the selected everything else. I save this filter in here. So then next time when I have just want to run this tags check, I can just select from my list here. So then it will select just this, and then I can run it in here. Quick pause. So this can be run for a single file, like I'm doing right now, or for multiple files. So if you have multiple files for the same language, like this, same language, same workflow step, and I join them in the editor, I can also run the same QA check for all those files, right? So you don't have to run one by one. And then if there are issues, there will be a list in here so you can check them. Let me just try to find something so I can show you how it looks like. Give you just a second. Okay, there we go. So then you can click on those so that we're going to lead you to the specific segments, like segment number 3, segment number 4, so on. I can ignore if those are false positives, or I can fix if that's an actual issue, right? Next up, so these next two are kind of similar. They allow you to search for content either in the translation memories or in the glossary. One thing important is that they are um, we are searching for translation memories and glossaries that are associated with this particular project, right? So maybe like let's say that you are a translator, you have a translation engine that you work with, for that particular project, maybe they're not using all the translation memories from their clients because that's a marketing content. So they're using specifically the marketing translation memory. So you, as a translator from the editor, you when you search here, you're searching specifically in that marketing translation memory, right? Just to make that clear that you are not searching in the entire platform in all translation memories and glossaries available. You are searching specifically translation memories and glossaries associated with that project that you are currently working on. Filter, you can filter source by source and package content by typing here, or you can also use this metadata filter. So I just want to see maybe segments that are not confirmed. So when I click here, it's going to load that and show me just the not confirmed. And there are other options in here as well. Find and replace. So you can find and replace content in the target specifically. Translation change. So you can see literally every single action that have been taken in this particular segment that are me I mean working on it. So for instance, let's me add a parody here and then going back. So even though I did not confirm the translation yet, everything that I made, every change that I made is going to be kept in here, right? So that's basically to help you if you need at some point to understand, okay, so who made that translation or uh, how this um, who else touched that my translation, for instance. Maybe the project manager made some change to the translation, and you as a translator or reviewer want to see that, or vice versa. So this is just to help you to have like some a report of changes that have made to a segment. And then, of course, when I confirm, it's going to be stored in the translation memory, and also is going to show up here. So as you can see now, it is in green because it have been confirmed. But every interaction I have with segment is going to be stored in here. Next up is settings. So you can make changes to the settings in here. I'm not going to show everything in detail in here, but this is a cool one. Night mode and light mode. You can change the font settings if that's helpful, so you can see like the text better, right? And there are other options like expanded tags. Let me see if this file has any tags in it. No, there's not. But that basically it is going to show the content that's inside each tag you have in a file. Any questions so far before I move on onto the next um, item? If so, please let me know. All right, so tags are like this. So if I go in here and I change this, so I don't want to see the expanded tags, the tags will show up like this, right? So just these numbers. But if I want to see the content within those tags, for instance, a good example. So there are cases where a client they don't want their website, the URL to be translated, right? So what they usually do is to lock to convert those tags like this, so that cannot be translated, right? But you as a translator, it may be a good idea for you to know, okay, so what exactly does this one means, right? So you want to see that, and then when you expand it, you see, oh, okay, so this is their website, and what I have to do is just to keep that tagging here unchanged in the target, right? Maybe I miss what are the tags for? Good question, Patricia. So tags can be used in many different ways. So tags are used mostly for non-translatable content. So imagine that there is like an application, like maybe a web application or an app on your smartphone, and there are some items, codes, or notes that should not be translatable. For instance, as a developer, people may put some comments that are for their internal reference. So they don't want that to be translated, right? Because they want just their team to know, okay, so why they add this code like this in here in this line, right? So it's like an internal comment for their own team to know why those decisions were made in that particular line, for instance. So they don't want that to be translated because that's not part of the translatable content. That's part of the application in the code itself. So what they do is to convert those as tags like this. So we create what we call a regular expression, which will lock this content. So by locking, I mean like this, literally like this. So for instance, this is not editable. If I click in here in the source or in the target, I cannot edit. The only thing that I can do is either keep it or delete it, right? So that's in a nutshell basically what it is. It can be again can be used in many different ways, but tags usually are created to prevent people from translating them or from changing them. So usually that's applied whenever you have non-translatable content or content that should not be touched because that can literally break the file. So in my example again, when it comes to like an app, these codes that are not translatable, if I change them, maybe when I try to import this translated file back into my application, maybe I'm going to receive an error message. So kind of like I'm breaking the app. So I'm not able to upload the translation back into my application because I'm missing some parts of the code. So the tags help us to address that by not allowing people to add them, right? I hope it is kind of explains like how the tags work. So, but in summary, as a translator, my recommendation is to, unless you know that a tag should be deleted, which should be like an exception, you should be keeping the tag. Tags must not be touched in general, right? Because that again can literally break the file. So inline like this, you can change this the way you see the content. But yeah, so I'll let you explore this in more details when you access the platform. Anyway, so now that's basically like a quick overview of what I showed in the previous session, because I'm going to cover again the context and context-sensitive translation. But now let's talk about real quick on how to create your accounts and then how to set up your account. Okay, so to create your account, you go to our website, you go to bitworks.com, you click on pricing. From here, so you have like different options in terms of plans. Again, I'm not going to cover that. That's not my goal in the session. I will let you like to go through, but basically, solo is for a single translator. Boutique Clockwork, it may be used by a translation agency or a small company, and Quantum is usually for enterprise clients. So that's pretty much sum up what the difference are, the main difference. And also, of course, there are differences in terms of seats, in terms of features that are available for each one of those. But again, I'll let you go through this and check which one works best for you. Most importantly, and that's my goal. So since this is for translator, I'm assuming that most of you are going to use the solo for testing the platform. And so there are 14 days free trial and not credit card required. So you have, so if you click in here, enter your name and your email, you're not going to be charged for it. So after 14 days, if you did not enter your credit card information in the platform, your account is just going to be inactivated automatically, right? So again, no charge unless you decide to, okay, so yes, I'm going to really subscribe to the platform. Then from the platform, I'm going to show you how you can enter your credit card information and then go from there, right? Um, Let me see the chat here. Patricia is always the same. I wonder if the speakers. Yeah, so I'm using my own microphone here in my headset. Uh, is it still having issues with your audio, Manuela? All right. So again, enter your name here, enter your email. That will create your account. So then let me go back to home screen. You're going to receive an email, so you can set up your password. You set up your password from there, and then you enter your email plus your password that you set, and that will be your home screen. Just a pause. So this, of course, is a demo account, so that's why I have a lot of projects here already. So when you create your account, there will be nothing here except for from some items that we create automatically that I'm going to show you what it is. So home screen, this you can have an overview of the projects that you are maybe currently working on, right? So those that should be delivered today, that are overdue, tomorrow, should be delivered later. So that's based on the due date of the project, as you can see here. Maybe let me just zoom in a little bit. If anyone is having any difficulties to see my screen, please let me know and I can zoom in a little bit more. Okay, just let me know in the chat. All right, so I'm going to cover the basic setup. So the idea here is to get you started. So make sure that you have at least the basics so you can start using the platform, right? So account created from our website. This is where you set your password. Now, uh, sure, let me just zoom in a little bit more. I hope this is better for now, for everyone now. Okay, then the basic setup would be go to settings, go to account settings here, settings, account settings, usage, enable coach automation. So that basically calculates the costs automatically for the project, so you don't have to do it manually. Then go to LLMs. Important note here, that's not a requirement, okay? So you do not have to activate either the code automation or this LLM. So, but that's is what we use for our context-sensitive translation and other features we have here. You can see all the features and how they work here. There are some details. I'm also going to cover a little bit of this in the session. But again, that's how I would recommend you to set up your account, but that's not a requirement. Okay, if you don't want to activate that, that's fine. And most important, by default, that's deactivated. Okay, so it's already activated in my account because I did that previously, but by default, that would be deactivated. Then there's no need for you to activate that if you don't want to do it. All right. So usage, code automation, translation settings, LLMs, enable augmented translation access if you want to give it a try, which I would recommend. But again, I leave that up to you. Next up, context, translation memories, and glossaries. So by default, we created automatically one translation memory, one glossary. So the source in our translation memory by default would be English US, the same for the glossary. And there are some languages that we add here automatically as well. So as you can see, so I have Bulgarian, Spanish Latin, and French France, and so some other languages. If the language that you're going to be translated into is not in this list, you have to open the translation memory, go to Actions, Edit, and then you can add or remove languages from here, right? So let's say, let me see a language that's not here. Maybe I want to add some Thai here. Okay, so then I add Thai, and then when I translate the project, I can use the translation memory for Thai as well, right? Okay, of course, assuming that the source is English. If the source is different from English, then you have to create a separate translation memory, right? So then let's say that's the opposite. The Thai is the source and the target language is English. You create a separate translation memory for that, and then you can start saving your content in that translation memory, all right? The same for glossaries. So we have a glossary here with some languages, and if there is any language that I'm going to be using that's not here, I can go to Actions, Edit, and add those additional languages to it, right? Okay, so then after creating your translation memory and glossaries, or just adding the language in here that you'll be using, next step is if you have a TMX file, which is a standard format for translation memory, or a TBX file, which is a standard format for glossary, and you want to import them here, you can do it, right? So you have maybe a translation memory that you have been using for quite some time that has a lot of content in it, and you want to use to leverage the translations, the previous translation that you made, you can just go in the translation memory or the glossary, import file, you drag and drop your browse your file in here, and then you can upload those to the platform, right? So again, TMX for translation memory, TBX for the glossary. So those are the standard formats for translation memories and glossaries. Next would be going to organizational units. I already have one. So the platform will create automatically one organizational unit for you. You can add others, right? But again, I'm focusing on a scenario or a use case where you just want to create some project in the platform and test it out. So you want to go to the editor and start to translate the content to see what is this context-sensitive translation about, right? So that's why I'm focusing on the just the basics. You can get much more complex than that. Um, Sounds good, Yuriko. Good to see you here. So this will be recorded as I mentioned previously. So you'll be in our YouTube. If you have some time and you can give it a watch, I would recommend that. And you can also watch the previous sessions that are also available in our YouTube. And you have more sessions in the following sessions as well, the following weeks as well. Thank you for being here. All right, so I opened the organization that I have in here. I'm going to project. That's one of the most important ones, in my opinion. You set up the common source and target language that will be translate the content into, from, and into, because that's helping you. When you are creating a project, that will be pulled automatically to the project that you are creating. So the organization is kind of like a template, right? So that's how it helps you. But again, going back to your use case where I'm a translator, and as a translator, I usually translate into maybe one or two languages, just one or two languages. Excuse me. Let's say that I'm a translator that translate just into Chinese, China, or simplified Chinese, and maybe I also try to translate into Chinese, Taiwan, right? So that's those are usually the language that I translate into. So the goal here is to add the language that you translate the most, right? So that you don't have to do select those languages every time that you are create a project. If the language always vary, you can leave that empty. That's totally fine. Again, this is just a template to help you out with the project creation. Next up would be context. Context is what we just saw in here, translation memories and glossaries. So again, the platform will create automatically translation memory, glossaries. You can create others. One thing that's crucial is, let me just delete this one from here. When I create or when I'm going to set up for the first time in organizations, I have to add the translation memories and glossaries that I want to use. So in this case, I have just one translation memory, the one that I just showed. Next step, I have to set as default read and write, right? So default is basically, so every time that I create a project under this organization unit here, the BWX training units, this is going to be automatically added to the project. That's what is default about. Read is to allow you to use this in the editor, so you can read the content in the translation memory, and write, so you can store confirmed segments into the translation memory, right? You can add penance to it, you can set the threshold, but again, I'm not going to cover that right now, just the basics. Glossary is kind of similar, the difference that you do not write in the glossary, like when you confirm a segment, right? So the only option is set as default, but it's the same concept. When you go to a new organization unit, you go in there and you add the glossary. It could be multiple for both, for translation memories and for glossaries. You can have one or multiple. Okay, so now I'm all set. So quick recap. What I did here was to go to settings, account settings usage. I activated for my use case the code automation. Then I went into translation settings, LLMs. I activated the context sensitive translation and all the AI features you have in the platform. Not the requirements again, but I would recommend doing that, at least so you can give it a try to see how it behaves. Then I already had a translation memory and a glossary, so I did not add any other languages to it because the language that I'm going to use were already there. Then I went into the organization units, I open it, I select the source and target languages that I'm going to use. In my case, I did not select any target language, just the source. I went to context, I selected the translation memories and glossary and activate them. Finally, last step that I believe that's really important is to set up how we want the content to be pre-translated. So again, the platform has a default. So by default, we are going to translate just the empty segments, not confirmed segments. You are going to mark task as completed if all the segments are confirmed when we pre-translate the content. And there are some other options here. We, by default, again, we also pre-translate with translation memory, excuse me. Now, you, again, as a translator, or maybe as a translation agency, maybe you want to change that. Maybe you want to translate with translation memory. And if anything, if any content is not in the translation memory, everything else, the empty segments, I want to pre-translate with machine translation. So I have to type this in here. So I activate this machine translation usage. And again, if any questions, please send them in the chat. I can pause here and respond to the questions. So I'm changing this. So this, what I'm doing here, thank you, Manuela. Take care. Good to have you here. So what I'm doing here is to setting up how I want this content to be translated. So I want to be translated the content with translation memory, and everything else, everything that's empty with machine translation. And then I have other options here. I want to confirm segments that are 100%, 101% from the translation memory. I'll leave this in empty. I'm not going to touch that. I just wanted to give you an overview in here. And then you can dig deeper into that. And I can also cover that in more detail, maybe in the next workshop. Now, finally, with this setup, I can go to the project, new project. I can drag and drop files, or I can find in my computer. So I have a folder in here which have the sample documents. I'm going to upload some different documents in here. I'm going to continue. Okay. Oh, by the way, I did not save the. Let me just open here so you can see it. Yeah, I did not save. That's why all those links show you up again. So I had to scroll down here and click on save. Anyway, so as I mentioned, so this is kind of like uh, a template. So as a template, it's going to automatically select that. I can give you a project reference name. So that's the name of the project. So this would be workshop 3. Contact person. So it will be myself for this example. Translation members and glossary, since I selected those as default, those are automatically selected here. Now I'm going to continue. I can change this translation work, this workflow steps. I'm going to just keep translation, but I could add others as well if I want to. So I can change all that for different files or keep it the same for all the files. In my example, just to make it simple, I'm just going to give to have translation only for all those files and languages. This is going to run the project creation. And in a few seconds, you're going to run the code automation. That's the one that I based at the beginning. Thank Caroline. Good to have you here. And I'm going to respond to your question in a second, Liliana. Um, so the code automation is basically calculate the cost automatically. So as soon as the files get processed in the platform, the code automation will run is going to calculate the number of words you have in the file. It's going to calculate the cost based on the price list I have in here. So I did not create a price list for this project, but the platform will have like a standard price list just for the sake of allowing people to test the platform out. So that's why it has a cost calculated here. That's like it's not an actual cost, right? So you can create your own price list the platform, but by default platform already has one, so you can at least create and approve a project. Okay, so project is pending. Uh, the project is transition automatically from draft to pending due to the automation, and now I can approve it. So how does that work? So as a translator, so again, I'm providing services for a translation agency. If I'm receiving the tasks, I'm not going to touch on any of this, right? So now, if you are a translator, you have your own account in the platform, then you have to do all those steps. So when are you going to change the status from pending into approved? So basically, is when you send your code to your clients approve your codes. Then when this happens, you go to the platform and you change from pending into approved. So basically, the pending means coding is waiting for approval from the client, right? So that's what the meaning of the pending, and the draft means that you are still preparing the code. So because maybe you need to have some additional costs added to it, right? So maybe this file requires some sort of design work or an additional QA step or something. So all this can be done in the draft status. When in transition pending means that code's ready. I'm sending it to the client and waiting for the approval. When you receive approval, you change it to approval, right? Now, let me just have a look in here to the Biliana's question. If you have several translation members, I mean different source than English and English, would this a problem? Can be sorted automatically, or have to choose then depending on language pairs? Okay, so if you have some, And it's not a problem, Liliana. The only thing is that each translation memory can only have one source language, and each project can only have one source language, right? So, for instance, I can even show you. I think that would be easier to explain. So, I have this one, which is from English US into all those target languages. I want to have another one, opposite pair. I'm just going to give a random name here. I'm going to, this would be, again, let's use my previous example from Thai, maybe into English or any other language. I'm just going to create this, add this to the organization, and I had to change the name. There. Okay, so now I have two translation memories. So one from English, another one from Thai into English. And I could have others. I could have more and more and more for different languages. So there are the only thing that you have to keep in mind is that for projects with English as a source, you can only use this one and all the other ones that has English as source. If you create a project with Thai, under the same organization unit where I just create this project, then you can use this one. So there's no problem in having like multiple translation memories and with different language pairs. You just have to keep in mind that for each project, you can only have one source language. So as long as that you have separate projects, it's totally fine to have multiple translation languages with different uh, language pairs. I hope that responds to your question. If not, please let me know in the chat. Let me see another question here. What about language written from right to left, such as Hebrew? It's not always possible to place tags accurately. That's a good question, Riffy. I hope that I pronounced your name correctly. So that's a great question, and I will let you maybe to help me with that, if that's okay. So I'm going to create a project in here. Let me just upload a file which probably has tags in it, those two files in here, and let me create a project using maybe Hebrew, and let's see it. Okay, so I forgot to select myself. All right. And if anyone else has any other suggestions in terms of languages and that want to see in the platform, please do let me know. So let me just, okay, process this. It is run the automation. It's going to calculate costs now. Okay, there we go. I'm going to approve. All right, so now let me open the editor. Let me see if this file actually has tags in it. All right, there you go. Okay, so this may be a good example or maybe not. Okay, so first thing, I already activated the context sensitive translation. So when I click on this segment, it's going to translate the content using it. So let's see how that goes. All right. So, and if you can send me the chat if that looks okay. I mean, at least the tags are in the correct position. That would be good to know. But basically, so what is happening here is that, so let me see, I don't have any translation memories or machine translation or glossary suggestions. So as you can see here, I'm only using the input from this context sensitive translation. And there's one thing that's pretty cool, but I will let Riffy, if that's okay, to let me know if that's working properly, which is, let me just delete those tags. And by the way, I don't speak any Hebrew, all right? So I just delete the tags in here. Let me also remove this. Okay, now we have this feature which call fixed tags. So fixed tags is not just adding the tags to the context, it should be adding the tags in the right position as well. But let's see how that goes for Hebrew. All right. So I don't know if you can see Riffy. So if you can put in the chat if you think that is well positioned, that would be helpful. Okay, the example is accurate, but now always gotcha. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. So when you say that it's not accurate, you mean like whenever you're using the context sensitive translation, or like in general, let's say when you're using maybe a machine translation or something, just so I can understand that. Fixed tags is down below here. When you go to the segment, you have this BWX augment actions. Then there's this button fixed tag. There are other options here, but that the particular one is this last one here, fixed tags. So the tag should have been fixed properly. If not, that's something that I would like to hear your feedback. Not just right now. If you have a feedback for us regarding this, please send to us. That would be really helpful for us to understand what's breaking that and how we can improve that. Right. All right. So, and thank you for that, Patricia. I appreciate that. All right. So what else? Let me go back here. I create the project, I approve the project, and then, as I showed you, so the project got approved when they received the approval from my client, in my example, and then I can go into the editor. Um, I can go into the editor and starting translating my content, right? So that's usually pretty much the same in the different cat tools. So the goal here is to go segment by segment, reading, checking the translation, and making changes to it as needed, and then confirming those segments. One thing that's important, and that's probably the last topic that I'm going to cover, um, is about this. Okay, so this is the context-sensitive translation, and I think that's important to explain that because it may be a pretty complex feature to be understood. So the best example that I can give you is, for instance, let's use, I also have an open here, ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, you can send like, please translate me something. ChatGPT will do that, will provide you with a translation, right? That's one thing. But what's happening, what we are actually doing here in the editor, and that's what's complex, is not that we're just sending to GPT this parking photo and say, okay, translate that for me into Hebrew, right? What's happening in the background is that we are providing to GPT um, first encrypted information, so that information is not out there in the web. So there you can send like you can have sensitive content flow into the platform, into the GPT. You can your content is not being stored and not being used for training the GPT. What happens when you're using the actual website? So in this integration, we're using an API that's basically a tunnel, and in this tunnel that we're using to connect with GPT, all the information is encrypted, and again is not stored in the GPT. All of this information is stored in BWX, in your translation memory, in your glossary. So that's the first concept. The second concept is what's happening here. Again, we are not just saying in GPT, okay, so there is this source here, and I want this translated into that language. Please translate that to me. Is more complex than that. We are sending the previous segments for context. We are sending the next segments for context. We are sending the translation memory matches we have in your translation memory. We're sending the terms that are available in the glossary. So the prompt that how we call like the prompt that we send to GPT like is pretty complex and it has a lot of content in it because the end goal this context sensitive is it is context sensitive. So basically we're providing any content that we understand that's relevant so GPT can check that context and make a decision based on what makes more sense for this particular segment, right? So I'm going to just read this. Semantically search through all offer translator relevant contexts such as translation memories, glossary, and machine translation. So when we say that we are retraining on the fly, real time, this engine, the context sensitive, it means literally that, let's say, let me open the editor. Segments number one, parking photo. If I, let's say that I want to add photo as photo, I don't want that to be translated for any given reason. So now, from now on, we already retrained GPT because for the next segment, for the next document, maybe where I have the same term, which is photo, I'm already using that for reference, for context for GPT, right? That's one example. Okay, but what if I do not add this to the glossary and I just confirm the segment? That also is going to teach AI. That's also going to retrain AI because that's now maybe it's not stored in your glossary, but it's stored in your translation memory, right? So every decision that you make in any given segment is retraining AI. And we do not say train, we say retrain because training means we are like downloading your entire translation memory, your entire glossary. We're sending maybe to GPT, so GPT can be trained on that, and then you can use it, right? And what happens if I make a lot of changes to my glossary? Okay, so I have to download again your glossary, send again to GPT so it can be trained again based on the most up-to-date terminology that we are using. We're not doing that. We're not sending or storing your information. So that happens on the fly. Based on every single decision, every single change that I made here that I store in my glossary translation memory, that's learning, right? It's retraining, retraining, retraining. And the more I change that, the more it learns from me, from my decisions, how I want the content to be translated, how I want, which tone that I want to be using in my translation, right? And I'm explaining that like in more detail because one thing for you that will be starting using the platform, and as I mentioned at the beginning as well, it is not a requirement in any way for you to activate the AI features and LLM. I would recommend doing that. But one thing that's important is to understand the concept because probably if you go to this to the very first segment, there is no translation memory, there is no glossary, there is no machine translation. You receive a translation here. Maybe this translation will be really bad, will be completely the opposite of what you wanted it to be. That's fine, as long as you understand that, okay, maybe this translation is not good. So what I do, okay, so I make changes in here, I make the adaptations needed. Maybe if there is a key term here that I want to be added to the glossary, I can do it here right now. And then next segment, AI is probably going to propose me something that will be closer than what I would have done, right? And that will happen throughout the file and the documents and so on and on and on, right? So this is more like a recommendation like for any of you that will be using or testing the large language models is to not get frustrated in the very first segments that you are translating because AI is not static. It's not like machine translation, which is machine translation is really helpful, by the way. But it's not like machine translation. It is learning from your decisions. It is learning from the terminology. It's learning from the content, the translation memory. So the more you teach AI and you teach it by making decisions and storing content in your translation memory and glossaries, the more, the closer the translations, the suggestions, excuse me, from AI would be closer to your decisions or how you would have done those translations. And again, going back to the beginning of the session, AI is a tool. AI is not a translator. That's why we created this in such a way which allows you to use it in the way that's going to benefit you the most, right? So I'm not a translator, but sometimes I use the translation editor to make some tests and stuff. And I want AI to work for me. I'm not working for AI. And that's one thing that I would like you to keep in mind. So AI is a tool, and AI should be working for you. How AI can work in your favor is if you teach AI, AI is going to do that, right? Uh, Okay, last but not least, let me just, and again, any final questions? Oh, if you have any suggestions for the next webinar, we should be next week or in the following, please send in the chat. So I really, really want to use your suggestions to make sure that I'm covering everything that's important for you and something that maybe you want to learn more about. Maybe I can go deeper in some of those subjects like the setup. So the setup that I showed you was pretty basic. So it can get more and more and more complex. And maybe for some of you that's interesting. So please let me know in the chat and I'll do my best to try to prepare a presentation covering those aspects. All right. So Biliana, so we can upload all the translation memories we have in the platform. When we create our workflows, we'll add corresponding translation memory, use the workflows, I imagine. Kind of. So the translation memory is not associated with a particular workflow, but with the project itself. So for instance, excuse me, this project has, maybe it's not a good example, it has just translation. But let's say that I have translation, review, encounter review. I have like 5 workflow steps, right? The translation memories are associated with the entire project, right? So from the very first workflow step, if it is in write mode, when the translator confirms the translation, that's going to be stored in your translation memory, right? So that will happen throughout all the other workflow steps. So every workflow step where the content gets changed or confirmed, that will keep uh, updating the translation memory, right? So it is not by workflow step, it's for the entire project. But yes, I could have, for instance, 5 translation memories here because I can give you an example. So there are some people that has like, so maybe this is a marketing content, but I have a technical translation memory for the same client. I have maybe a legal translation memory for the same client, the financial translation memory for the same client. So, and maybe I can leverage something from them that can help me with this marketing translation. Maybe not, but let's say that I can. So what I would do, for instance, in a scenario like this is, okay, so the marketing translation memory will be the main one. For the other translation memories, maybe what I can do to differentiate that, I'm going to add a penalty to it. So like I want to add like maybe 1 or 2% penalty to the translation memories because I don't want a content that is stored in my legal translation memory that that may be 100% match to be automatically confirmed, for example, because this is marketing content is not legal. But I do want to have that as reference because maybe with just a few adaptations to it, maybe it is good enough for marketing, right? So I can leverage multiple translation memories in here, and I can also like add panels to it so I can differentiate and make sure that I'm not just blindly applying all those translation memory to my marketing content, unless it is applicable. If it is applicable, I don't have to add any panels to it. I can just upload and have all the 5, 10, 20 translation memories available in this project, right? And most importantly, all of those translation memories can be read and write. So you can store the content in all the translation memories, or maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to just save the content in this one, and the other ones you just want to use as read. So you can just see the content and use it, but you don't want to store the new translations in it. So thank you so much, Elitza. I appreciate that. Um, Riffy, thank you again. Claudia. So let's wrap up. So this will be available on YouTube again, and the previous sessions are also available on YouTube. I will continue to have this session, then the following sessions. Uh, for next sessions, again, please feel free to share examples, share language that you would like to have some examples. I'm happy to jump on those as well because these sessions are being made for you. So I really want to teach you something, and of course, always learn from you as well because you are the professionals in the localization world, and really want to try to show you how the platform can work in your favor. You are not working for AI. AI is working for you. It is working for us, and that's how it should be, in my opinion. Right. So thank you again, everyone, for your time. It was a pleasure to be here with you. We'll send notification for the next workshops. Again, good to talk to you all. Always a pleasure. Take care. Have a great rest of the week, and I'll see you in the next few weeks. Bye bye. Take care.